In today's lesson, we're going to try to begin to understand integers. Now, this should not be new to you as a pre-algebra student. You should have worked with negative numbers in the past, which is why we're just going to spend one day reviewing the basic idea of integers, and then we'll move on to the operations with integers, our adding and subtracting and multiplying and all that stuff. So the integers are all of the whole numbers and their opposites. What are the whole numbers? Well, that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so on and so on. No decimals, no fractions. Their opposites are the negative versions. So negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, so on and so on. Positive integers are the values bigger than 0. Negative integers are the numbers less than 0. Absolute value, which we will talk about sporadically, is the distance that a number is from 0 on a number line, and that is always positive. And I'll show you why here real fast. If I just draw a real quick number line, and we'll put negative 2 through 2 on that number line. And I ask, what is the absolute value of 2? Well, that's asking how far away from 0 is 2. If you start at 0, to get to 2, you have to take 2 steps. If I ask you for the absolute value of, sorry, that did not quite write the way I wanted it. Let me fix that. Negative 2, that's saying if I start at 0, how many steps do I have to take to get to negative 2? Well, I have to take 2 steps. I'm not asking for direction. I'm just asking how many steps do I take? That's why absolute value is always positive. We're just talking about counting a number of steps. The highest elevation in Maryland is 3,360 feet above sea level. The lowest is 174 feet below. Use integers to represent these numbers. Okay, so positive numbers, which would be the above sea level, we can just represent normally, or we can represent with a plus sign in front of the number to illustrate that it is definitely positive. Now, we assume, if there's no symbol in front of a number, that it is in fact positive, but if you want there to be no doubt, you can put the plus sign. And you will have some problems on tonight's worksheet that will show you the plus sign. That will only happen on tonight's worksheet, won't happen on quizzes or anything, but I just wanted you to be aware of it. The lowest point is 174 feet below sea level. That's going to be under 0, below 0, sea level is 0. So 174 feet below is negative 174. There is no other way to illustrate this number. So positive numbers, we do have the option of showing the sign, but negative numbers must always show us that they are negative. Evaluate each of the following. The absolute value of. Now we know this just means how many steps away from 0 do we have to go to hit this number. And we already know the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. The absolute value of positive 2 is 2. How many steps would we have to take to get to negative 3? Well, from 0, we'd have to go to negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3. If you were counting, that's 3 steps. How many steps to get to 0 if you start at 0? Well, you're there, so no steps. To get to 5, starting from 0, we would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. If you counted, 5. And as I hope you caught on by now, to get to negative 9 from 0 would take us 9 steps. Absolute value just takes away negative signs on numbers. That's all it does. The key thing with absolute value is, please remember, it just takes away negatives. It does not change the sign of numbers. That is the most common mistake students make with absolute value moving forward. Next, putting things in order from smallest to biggest, or least to greatest. Now remember, look at the number line I drew above. Smaller numbers are always to the left, so negative 2 is smaller than negative 1. So if you look at this list and say, okay, which one would be farthest to the left if I drew out a full number line, that's going to be negative 7. And once I use it, I'm going to cross it off so I don't use it again. When I look at all my other numbers, negative numbers are all smaller than 0, so I have to get my negative numbers in first. So my choices are -3 and -1. Which one is smaller? Again, look at our number line. -3 would be to the left of -1. The only negative number left is -1. 0 is always the dividing point between positive and negative numbers. And the last numbers we have to place are 6, 2, and 4. I do expect you to be able to place those without comment. Finally, we have to check for comparison using our less than symbol, greater than symbol, or an equal symbol. First, comparing two positive numbers. How does 3 compare to 6? 3 is less than 6. Less than is the symbol that opens to the right. These symbols point at the smaller number, and they open towards the larger number. When you were taught this way back in first grade, you probably drew teeth in it, called it an alligator or a crocodile, and always said it was going to eat the bigger number. And if that mental process still works for you, use it. In the second problem here, we are asked to compare -4 with -9. If we think about a number line, -9 is going to be way out to the left. -4 is in a little closer to 0. Numbers to the left are smaller. That means -4 is bigger. So this is greater than. -4 is greater than -9. In the third example, we're asked to compare -4 with +6. Don't overthink this. Positive numbers are always larger than negative numbers. So -4 is less than 6. The fourth example asks us to compare 8 with -2. Again, we have a positive and a negative. The positive will always be larger than the negative. 8 is greater than 2. And finally, we are asked to compare 0 with -2. 0 is always larger than negative numbers. It is always smaller than positive numbers. So for this last example, 0 is greater than -2.